I was working the night shift as a nurse at a small hospital outside the city, from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. It was my second week on the job, and I was still trying to get used to the eerie silence that filled the corridors after midnight. There were only about 50 patients at night, and most were sleeping peacefully. That night, I was assigned to the third floor, the oldest wing of the building. The fluorescent lights flickered occasionally, and some rooms hadn't been used in years. While checking vital signs and keeping watch to make sure everyone was comfortable, I noticed the door to room 317 was slightly ajar. I knew that room had been empty for months. They were doing renovations, but for some reason, they had stopped. I approached and looked inside. The room was dark except for a small amount of moonlight coming through the window, and that's when I saw her, an elderly woman sitting in a chair by the window, looking out. I was baffled because there was no record of anyone ever being admitted to that room before. As I entered, I said, "Excuse me, ma'am, you shouldn't be here." She didn't answer, just kept looking out the window, her hands neatly folded in her lap. I walked around her. When I turned toward her, what I saw chilled me to the bone. Her eyes were completely white, as if both were covered in cataracts, and her skin was gray, almost blue. I wanted to touch her shoulder to see if she was all right, but the moment my hand touched her, she turned her head toward me with unnatural speed. Her mouth opened incredibly wide, and she let out a terrible, guttural sound. I staggered backward, my heart pounding in my chest, and ran out of the room. I went straight to the nurse's room and checked the computer. There were no patient records in room 317. I explained the situation to my supervisor, but she looked at me as if I were crazy. She probably said I was tired and hallucinating, but I was sure of what I had seen. I refused to go back to that floor alone for the rest of my shift. When morning came, I asked one of the nurses on the day shift about room 317. She was very quiet, and then she told me that an elderly woman had died in that room about 5 years ago. She had been in a coma for weeks and had passed away alone one night. Since then, people have said they saw her sitting in that chair, looking out the window. The next day, I requested a transfer to another floor. I still work at that hospital, but I never go to the third floor anymore, especially at night. Sometimes, when I'm walking through the parking lot after my shift, I look at the window of room 317, and I swear I can see her silhouette sitting there waiting. My name is Claire, and I work the closing shift at a small gas station on the side of a quiet highway in a deserted location. I'm alone most weekday evenings. At 2 a.m., it's no longer public, just harsh lights, an empty road. Days before the incident, I felt I was being watched. Not overtly, but more in patterns. The same car near the start of my shift. Headlights lingering a little too long in my mirror. A figure at the edge of the parking lot, disappearing the moment I glanced at it twice. I told myself it was stress. Then one night, I realized it wasn't just a feeling. Around 2:30 a.m., while I was behind the counter, I noticed a figure outside, at the edge of the lights, where the tree line begins. At first, I thought it was an animal. Then, it stepped forward, and I saw it was a man in a dark hoodie, his hands in his pockets, and there were no cars nearby. He wasn't there to buy anything. I walked straight to the front door and locked it. I didn't care that technically we were still open. My hands started trembling the moment the bolt clicked. When I looked up again, he was closer, standing right in front of the glass. He knocked on the door. It wasn't a gentle knock. It was a hard knock that made the door vibrate. I didn't answer. I ducked behind the counter. He knocked again, then leaned down, bringing his face close to the glass as if trying to catch my eyes in the reflection. I remained motionless. A few seconds later, he pulled back and smiled. Just a small, quiet smile, as if it struck him as funny. Then he turned and walked toward the woods. He started running into the trees as if he wanted me to watch him go. I watched until he disappeared. For a moment, I was truly relieved. Some time passed, and I heard a metallic sound from the back of the shop, the back doorknob. A quick, aggressive click. Someone was trying to get in. The back door isn't visible through the front windows. No customers should be there. Another hard pull rattled the door, and then I heard metal scraping against the frame, like someone was using a tool. I crouched behind the counter, grabbed my phone, and called 911. I told the operator someone was trying to force open the back door, and that I was alone. Then everything went quiet. It was so quiet I could hear my own breathing. And that's when the front door rattled once, a hard push against the locked glass. I looked up, hoping to see him. The front was empty. That was the worst part. I couldn't keep track of where they were anymore. A few minutes later, police lights illuminated the parking lot. After checking the front, police officers went to the back with flashlights. They found fresh scuff marks and small scratches around the back door latch, evidence that someone had tried to force it open. They didn't find anyone, but they asked if I knew him. I didn't. They asked if anyone had been bothering me lately. Calls, messages, someone showing up, things like that. For weeks I wanted to explain the patterns, but without evidence it sounds like paranoia, so I just said no. They filed a report, took the camera footage, and told me to be careful. I still work the night shift, but I can't stay open when the parking lot is empty. My instincts constantly tell me to lock the door. I carry my phone with me. I never take the trash out after midnight, and I keep thinking about how he ran into the woods, because whoever tried that back door knew exactly what they were doing, and they knew I was alone. The incident log shows my badge was scanned into the acceptance department at 11:48 p.m. I was alone because Jenkins was ill, and the regional manager needed an urgent count of the hydraulic valve inventory before the morning inspection. I'd been working the night shift at Meridian Industrial Supply for 8 months, long enough to know its rhythm after dark. The hum of fluorescent lights, the sound of distant vehicles on the highway, the occasional groan of 30-foot-high steel racks spread across 4 acres of concrete floors. In Zone C, I started by scanning warehouse locations with the handheld terminal. The scanner beeped twice for each successful read, but around midnight, it registered a displacement for a group of pressure regulators I knew I hadn't touched. It was probably a system malfunction. I kept working, motion-activated aisle lights flickering in sections in front of me, then dimming behind me as I passed. The air smelled of machine oil and cardboard dust. Somewhere near the loading areas, a metal warehouse door rattled slightly. I stopped and listened. There was nothing. Old buildings just sit there, I thought. At 12:30, I noticed the top door of compartment number 3 wasn't fitting properly into the frame. There was only a 2-centimeter gap underneath, just enough for cold air to get in. I'd locked all the doors at the start of my shift. I walked over and pulled the chain to put it in place. There was a fresh scratch on the concrete near the threshold. I thought it might be from the last pallet load of the evening shift. I called headquarters on the radio. Interference. The steel racks were creating dead zones. I went back to the office cubicle to get a clear signal. I turned towards the main corridor and froze. 4 corridors away, motion sensor lights were flashing in sequence. 1, 2, 3, 10-second intervals. They were moving deeper into the warehouse. No one else had been assigned to duty tonight. No one had entered after me. I tried to find a logical explanation. Maybe a mouse. Maybe the sensors had a timer malfunction, I thought. But the lights kept moving. 5, 6, methodically. "Hey, is anyone there?" I shouted. My voice went unanswered. Then the lights came back on. They started clicking rapidly, one after another, as if something was running towards the exit. My heart started pounding. I ran towards the office cafe, the sound of my boots on the concrete floor incredibly loud. I reached the cafe, slammed the wire mesh door, and unlocked the padlock. Through the window, I saw the CCTV monitor wall, 12 black and white images, mostly showing empty corridors. But the 7th image, section 3, had a blind spot behind the propane tank. I watched the timestamp progress. Nothing moved on the screen. I called 911. I said someone was inside. While waiting, I checked the access logs from the terminal. My badge at 11:47, then a failed entry attempt from the side exit at 12:52 with a disabled badge, employee code 10447. I searched the database. Marcus Tully, fired 3 months ago due to inventory loss. Police found him 20 minutes later, loading CNC drill parts into a van parked near the perimeter fence. He'd been hiding in the mezzanine storage area, waiting for the building to empty since the evening shift ended. He knew the camera blind spots. He knew the motion sensors wouldn't trigger if you crouched down and moved slowly until you needed to run. I finished my statement at 3 p.m. The district manager suspended operations in Area C until a security audit was conducted. I drove home. my hands still trembling on the steering wheel as the sky turned gray. I don't work the night shift anymore. When I close my eyes, I still see those lights flickering one by one, moving toward me from the darkness.